So the price of everything, absolutely through the roof. And influencer named Steve McGrew, comedian, he says he's tired of hearing that our grandparents could buy a house on one salary, but now we can't afford rent on two salaries. And his answer to this was, yeah, because grandma wasn't blowing half her paycheck on $12 iced coffee and avocado toast. That's why, exclamation point. I'm reading this verbatim, by the way. It's Steve McGrew on Facebook. Back then, if they wanted coffee, they made it at home with ground so strong it could remove rust. You didn't drink it, you survived it. And grandma wasn't out there brunching. You think she had time for brunch? No. Grandma was at home cooking something called whatever's left in the house. Don't even bring up Uber Eats. These people crying about money when they're living in a 4-bedroom house with 2 SUVs, 6 streaming services, and matching sleeve tattoos. You think Grandpa had a tattoo? Yeah, he had one. It said Korea 1951. Oh, and don't get me started on kids. We can't make ends meet. Yeah, but Braden needs a new iPhone. No, he doesn't. You're giving an $1,100 phone to a kid who still eats glue and boogers. When we were kids, family phone hung on the wall. It had a cord long enough to jump rope with, and if you wanted privacy, you had to go stand in the pantry. And somehow we survived. Oh, yeah, and the TV, there was one. And it was in the living room, and Dad controlled it. If he wanted to watch bowling, guess what? You like bowling. And now every room's got a 65-inch screen TV, baby's got an iPad, and you're sitting there wondering why you can't afford rent. Because you're living like rappers. That's why. Grandpa wasn't out here leasing Teslas and buying $12 smoothies called Detox Sunshine. He was driving a truck that sounded like thunder and smelled like oil and cigarettes. You know, like Grandpa. They lived within their means. All right, so there's some logic to that, obviously embellished for comedic effect. But where I wanted to go with this one is one thing that has really, really changed, and arguments aside on why we can afford things and why we can't, that's out the window. I want to know that when you grew up, what was something that you suffered through because your parents controlled everything? And I think that's the big difference nowadays, where kids control the radio. If they still listen to radio, hopefully they do. Helps us out, helps our business. But it seems like kids are more in charge these days. And as an aside, I'm not saying everybody, but there are certain parents out there who would rather be friends with their kids than actually parent their kids, and that's where we go wrong. I'm not going to soapbox too much on that, but a small subset of that is the fact that kids control a lot of things. Back in the day, you know how many Lawrence Welk episodes I've seen? 27. You know why? Because my dad liked Lawrence Welk. Did I like Lawrence Welk? No, but I sat through a lot of it. And what did you have to sit through? Because your parents ruled the roost, and you had to go along with it. There was no going into the next room and watching what you want. There was no burying yourself into your phone. You had to sit there and watch Hee Haw, Lawrence Welk, maybe even both. And that's just dating myself. What was your point where you had to go along for the ride because your parents were in charge?
York County's morning show.